Welcome to the Matriarchy with Kath and Lisa. Hey, Kath, I'm really excited to have our guest on this week. This is a very important topic.
Yeah, we're going to be talking about banned books and a lot of the cultural war issues that are happening. You know, I've experienced it in my own community, and I know you have too, Lisa. And, you know, it's surprising that this is happening.
Surprising. Yeah.
I think a lot of people would be surprised, be like, oh, that's not happening in Rochester. Like, yes, it is. Yes, it is. Have you been to a school board meeting?
Yes, it is.
So,
as a lifelong reader, it kind of really pierces close to my heart. And I think that, you know, part of the reason we're talking about this today is we want everybody to be aware of what's happening, and we need to protect our access to books.
Yeah, absolutely. Books were so important to me as a child. Like, of course, we didn't have phones. We had the beginnings of, I remember my Atari kept me busy, but really, it was books. It was books that kept me company. It was books that educated me in many ways. It was books that I really needed at that time in my life, and they were so important. And I was a really avid reader as a kid. I still enjoy reading. Of course, life gets in the way sometimes, but I think for children, even though phones are a thing, books are still really critically important.
Absolutely. All my kids are big readers, so yes, absolutely.
So having said all that, I am super excited about the two guests that we have on today. Our guest, Christine Beachler. She's an educator at Lowell area schools. She's been there for 37 years, and for the past 23, she's served as the library media director and school librarian. Her passion for literacy and fostering a love of reading in students is her primary focus, and she works tirelessly to develop high-quality, diverse, relevant, inclusive, and comprehensive library collections in all 6 of her school libraries. Christine has been a member of the Michigan Association of School Librarians and is currently the 2025 MASL, I hope I got the acronym correct there, MASL president. In 2022, she was recognized by her MASL colleagues with the Roger Ashley Freedom to Read Award for demonstrating exemplary support for First Amendment rights. And I'm very excited to dig into that. Christine was again honored by MASL the following year in 2023 as District Library Director of the Year, and she was also honored in the same year as the Kent District Library's Literacy Champion Award for having a positive impact on literacy and defending the right to read throughout all of Kent County. So thank you, Christine. In addition to her teaching roles, Christine has also served on the Lowell Education Association Executive Board as treasurer and a bargaining team member for the past 25 years, and is a member of Governor Whitmer's Education Advisory Council. So welcome to the Matriarchy, Christine Beachler.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yes, welcome. I would like to now introduce our second guest today. Dr. Sara Hoeve taught secondary English before earning her doctorate in English education at Western Michigan University. After leaving P12, she taught at Calvin University, followed by a visiting appointment at Purdue University, West Lafayette. She joined the Hope College faculty in 2020. In addition to teaching, she serves as a director of student teaching and teacher certification. Dr. Hoeve currently serves as president of the Michigan Council of Teachers of English, MCTE. In her most recent research, she has examined the effects of parental rights campaigns on public school educators to explore effective strategies for resisting political pressure to censor or remove books, which is exactly what we're talking about today. So welcome to the Matriarchy.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So, Christine, let's start with you. We are always curious about the people and influences that help shape you. Were there any women in particular who inspired you growing up?
Well, of course, my mom mainly. She was a single parent. My mom was the main person in my life all the way until, unfortunately, she passed away in 2010. And so certainly my mom, but many educators along the way. I think of them often. My high school calculus teacher, and she was also my cheerleading coach, Sue Lutman. She was a huge influence on me. And another teacher, Miss Rupp, I'm friends with both of them on Facebook now, so that's kind of fun.
That's fun.
So, but yeah, I mean, it seems like a lot of people along the way. And my neighbor Linda Swift was a big influence in my life as well. She helped me by letting me work in her store in town, and so it just
What
has
kind of
always
store
been
was it?
a
What kind
flower
of
shop.
store was it?
A flower
Oh,
shop.
okay.
I was a floral designer, so it's kind of fun,
Oh, that's
and which
nice.
helped me get a job. Yeah, it was really fun, and helped me get a job in college doing that as well. So, and again, still part of my life. So, I've had quite a few different women, and then certainly colleagues at Lowell High School that I've worked with for all 37 years. A couple of them, and have been a huge part of my life and continue to be. And then some that have retired, and we still get together. So, quite a few really strong and classy and women full of grace and poise.
It's interesting to me when you mention the teachers. I'm like, when we think about like our favorite teachers, it's not the one that taught me, the nuts and the bolts of U.S. history or calculus. It's the ones who made me feel seen. And I presume that's the same for you.
Absolutely. And, just took an interest in my life and knew some of the struggles that we had personally in my family, and just, made sure that I had the opportunities that maybe I would not have otherwise had. So really kind of took me under their wing and helped. And so I was really fortunate to have people to help me, help find me jobs and things like that, so that I was able to work and be able to afford things and to do the things that I wanted to do, that have all led me to be the person that I am now.
So, as a young child or even a teenager, what were some of your favorite books when you were younger?
Oh, I loved the Little House on the Prairie series.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
I loved those books so much, and I really loved the Nancy Drew books when I was little. When I was younger than that, I loved the rhyming Dr. Seuss books. I memorized them even when I couldn't read. And I remember my mom reading them to me over and over and over. And then I would pretend I was a teacher in my room, and I'd have my stuffed animals lined up, and I was reading books to my stuffed animals, and I really couldn't read, but I memorized them. So I've always loved to read. I still love to read. I grew up in a really tiny town, like Odessa, Michigan, if you guys know where that is. Very small town, and, not any diversity at all. And so, books were the way that you certainly could see through someone else's eyes and build empathy and understanding, and things that were not your own lived experiences, being able to journey through some of those. So, it's what we teach kids over and over and over, to think for themselves and to develop those critical thinking skills.
So how about you, Sara? Tell us a little bit about the people and the books that helped to shape you.
Well, I grew up in a house full of women. So I have two other sisters. So my dad was stuck with, four of us girls growing up. And my dad was also a teacher for 42 years. And my parents were both avid readers. So I think we grew up kind of in a combination of education and reading and women, kind of all the perfect mix together that impacted who I became. Like Christine, I had teachers that had a huge impact on me. I remember my high school English teacher really well, being able to watch her and see that somebody could have a job where they could just come and talk about reading and talk about books and talk about writing. And I just thought that was the most incredible thing ever that
dream job
to do.
Yeah.
And I was always a big reader growing up, whether it was going to our public library, our school library, our church library. We just had books and books and books all the time. And I started off with kind of, innocent Ramona Quimby Babysitter Club books. And then as I got a little older, I loved the books I probably shouldn't have been reading, The Flowers in the Attic. And,
oh, yeah.
Diane Downs, Small Sacrifices, and all those ones where it was like, open worlds to things that I didn't know about. And but in a safe way, I think, to kind of explore some of those topics or learn
Yes.
about some of those topics. And then when I got into my own teaching and my own graduate work, I was just, again, because of the nature of education, especially English education, I was surrounded by a lot of women who were leaders and who were balancing family and their careers. I went to grad school with a cohort of girls, and we all did our PhDs while juggling. My one friend had 3 babies during her PhD program. My other
Wow.
friend was raising 4 teenagers during. So, having the friendships and the ability to kind of support each other through that was really impactful to me, and to see that these other women were able to kind of push through a lot of the challenges of being a working mom, professional, juggling career and all of the demands of home. It was really, I think, shaped who I am today as well.
So you grew up in a house full of women. Do you feel like you could always use your voice?
Absolutely. Yeah. My dad was, and still is today, probably the biggest cheerleader of all of his daughters. We were always encouraged to have opinions and have thoughts and be part of conversations. And my sisters are all, very high achievers we're all very close still as a family. We all live about 20 minutes from each other. And so I think we were always, very, very encouraged to have a voice and to debate and to learn and explore and share ideas growing up.
Yeah, that's wonderful. When you're saying, I'm thinking of you and your sisters and like doing debates, and it made me immediately think of Little Women. You know that scene when they're all acting out the debates and everything, and that's wonderful, and that's the best childhood, right?
Yep.
How about you, Christine? Do you feel like you've always been able to use your voice?
Yeah, there aren't very many people that could keep me from using my voice, honestly.
That's my favorite kind.
Yeah, unfortunately, fortunately and unfortunately, sort of depends on the situation. I'm not really one of those people that's really quiet and doesn't say much. That's just not me. I've always been pretty strong-willed. I've always been pretty determined, and not much has really ever held me back from something that I wanted to do. And so, yeah, my mom used to tell me I was quite bossy. And then later on, it was my leadership style. So we had to try
I love that.
we had to try to find some nice words for my bossiness. I was always kind of fighting to make sure my voice was heard. And if somebody wasn't listening, I would just say it over and louder.
There you go. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm definitely known as a strong-willed child, and probably a more strong-willed adult.
Like Christine, like I had my school set up at home. My dad took home, like when they were redoing his classroom, they got rid of the big wall chalkboard, and he put it in the basement for me to create my own classroom. And I was probably pretty bossy.
Assertive.
There you go. See, that's what I said. You're always trying to find nice words. I like the word assertive. Yeah.
We don't call boys bossy, do we? I don't know that you'd call a boy bossy. Why do we call girls bossy?
We just call a boy a boss. Kathy and I have been talking about this recently, just like, terms that we talk about that are related to females in a negative way, but when you say it about the guy, it's not, right? Yeah. So that's a whole other podcast that we're gonna have to do one day.
Oh, okay. So I want to delve a little bit into like why we're all here together and like what we're talking about, because as 4 women who enjoy reading and books clearly meant a lot to us, like how did we get to a place where books are being, it's fine for books to be challenged, right? But like for this to be controversial, right? And so before we get into what's going on in your district, I want to back up a little bit and talk about like the role of a school librarian and of a school library. And so we're all sort of on the same page about what we're talking about. So I don't know if Christine, you want to talk about the role of a school librarian?
Sure. So actually the role is a little bit different depending on the district. In my district, I'm only one school librarian with 6 different schools. And so it's quite different if you are a school librarian you're in one school. And so if you are working in just one school, you have a lot more say and control and input on everything coming in and out of the school library there. And certainly it all kind of works together with staff and with students and, book reviewers. Those are all the different kinds of ways that you look at, new purchases and bringing books into the collections. In my situation, it's a little bit different because, as I mentioned, I'm in 6 different schools. And so my library assistants and I work together to try to curate our collections. And, so I've shown them the different tools that we have available for purchasing books. And mostly we read reviews from professional reviewers that review the new books that are coming out. And so we work through all of those, what we're looking for, what kinds of things we need to add to our collection, if there are things that we're missing, if there are series we're trying to add to. So, curating the collection is one part of being a school librarian, but there are many, many others as well. I mean, we work with, copyright issues. I'm in charge of all that at our school. At the high school and the middle school, I'm in charge of all of our Chromebooks. I'm also in charge of all of the textbooks. And we check all of those in and out through the high school, and quite a bit of equipment for all of the staff, in addition to the Chromebooks. And there's certainly the part about teaching and learning and trying to help staff with, misinformation, disinformation, research topics, and, things like AI. Plagiarism. I mean, a school librarian actually just does so many things, and it kind of is different for each school and each staff member for what they need. And, everyone, of course, looks at and they think automatically about the library books and curating those collections. That's just really one small part of what we actually do day in and day out. And there are a lot of different things going into being a school librarian. And one thing that, in my opinion, that we are really, really missing the boat on right now is a requirement for media literacy or information literacy. There are many other states that actually have a requirement for that. And so while most of our students, I think, get it, it's a little bit fragmented and you don't really know exactly what they've been taught or how much of it they've been taught, kind of depending on which teachers that they've had. But, media literacy, information literacy is a really, really big area that I feel like Michigan needs to catch up on, because there is so much misinformation out, and really having kids trying to vet sources and discern fact from fiction. I mean, we have so many adults that can't do that, honestly. I mean, that's clear, right? And so, when you have people that are getting information from TikTok, that's just not factual. They can't guarantee that information is accurate, and maybe parts of it are accurate, but again, what are the sources? And kids need to really learn how to do that. So there are other states that have, like I mentioned, have this requirement, and Michigan doesn't. And then there are other states also that require a certified school librarian in every school, and Michigan does not have that either. So we are actually 46th in the nation for the number of school librarians to students. So we're really, really far behind in some of these areas, and I think it shows. I mean, I really think that it's evident in, some of the things that we're dealing with today.
I know in a couple school districts, like they'll have a school library, but no librarian or media specialist. And so there's just books in boxes.
Or they have somebody that, again, is a parapro which bless their hearts. They're worth their weight in gold. They're doing a fabulous job with the skills and tools that they have available. When you're a school librarian, you have a teaching degree and you have a master's degree in library science or the equivalent of one. And so when you go through that training, you learn a lot more about curating a collection and understanding how all of that works together. And so in my district, I work with my staff, my paraeducators, and they're fabulous. They do such a great job. But they have me to teach them how to do some of these things, and we work together, and they understand some of the things that we're looking for to try to balance our collection, make sure we have different viewpoints, make sure we have, we are basically trying to encourage a culture of reading in all of our schools, and that's really what we need to do. We have so many students, it's being reported anyway, that we have so many students going to universities in Michigan that are not readers. They've not read full books. They've read excerpts of books. They've read for information, different parts of books. That it shows when you're 46th in the nation and you don't have somebody that is encouraging kids to love reading. And, you need to understand there's a really big difference in teaching kids to read. Certainly, the science of reading, we're talking about making sure kids are reading at grade level. There's a really big push for everybody to make sure that our kids are getting the skills necessary to be good readers. But there's a completely different part of encouraging kids to love reading, finding the books that speak to them, finding the books that they can see reflections of themselves and that are relevant to them, that make them feel seen. That's really different than teaching a kid to read. And that's where, again, Michigan is really missing the boat on many of these things because we don't have school librarians curating these collections and making sure that we have all of the materials available on all sides of every issue and all different reading levels, all different perspectives. Those are really important pieces to have inside of every single library collection. And we really just don't have that right now. We have many schools that don't even have libraries at all. And when you've got kids that are bringing home books on, they've got the phonemic awareness and they've got, all these sight words, they're doing all of the right things teaching kids to read, but where, again, are they finding the Nancy Drew books? Are they finding the Ramona Quimby books? Are they finding the, Little House on the Prairie books, something that they love and that they can just continue to read and, plow through that whole series and then on to the next thing. And some of that is what we're really missing. And there really is nothing in place to bring that back.
So you said that Michigan is 46th in the nation in terms of the ratio of school librarians to students.
Mm-hmm.
What do the other states do to bring that up? Is that a legislative thing that they
do?
It is. It is. Okay.
Correct.
So
yes.
Not just,
yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Yep.
Is there any movement in Michigan to bring that to the state house or state senate?
There was a bill introduced last year there were two. There was Darren Camilleri and it might have been Senator Baer that both introduced legislation, and we did have a hearing to have a school librarian. It was graduated by the number of students. So yes, there was legislation, but it didn't make it out of committee. And so it did not get obviously passed. Part of the Senate's budget proposal includes a line item for school librarians, but the House's budget and the governor's budget do not include those same line items. One of the, in particular, pieces of legislation that's really critical is a study to find out how many school librarians we actually have in the state and how many schools actually have libraries. Because of all the things that I've already mentioned, right now, there is no specific information through the Michigan Department of Education letting people know how many schools even have libraries, librarians, or if they're para-eds. And so it's really complicated to try to implement legislation when we really don't know where we're starting. But I can tell you with the Michigan Association of School Librarians, when I would go to our conference 20 years ago, we would have 1,500 people at our conference. Now we have about 150 to 175.
Whoa.
That's how many school librarians have lost their jobs over the course of the last 15 to 20 years. And if you look at that direct correlation with our reading scores, when you have the disinvestment in curated collections in your libraries, you have it's a direct correlation with the drop in our reading scores. And some would argue that that's not why. I would argue it's part of the reason why, because again, are we curating collections that are speaking to our kids and relevant to our kids and making them lifelong readers and learners?
Yeah. So they enjoy it, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So when you talk about a school library, and if there is a book that a parent has an issue with, is there already a process in place to deal with that?
Yeah, if it's a parent that has a good faith concern about a library book, such as in Christine's district, they are able to search online to see all of the books that are in the collection. They're able to, there's a process that Christine had already set up in place that they're able to restrict certain books for their students, or able to restrict access to the library altogether. They're also able to challenge books or file a reconsideration request for books that they feel like aren't appropriate. There's all of those processes in place. So if a parent was approaching this issue in good faith and it really was a concern about the books, there are processes in place that they would follow.
And so you said that Christine, did you write the processes for your own school, or is there a standard across school libraries that all schools in Michigan have the same process on how to handle challenged books, or is this really a school by school issue?
Well, the template is there from the American Library Association, which is something that we learned in a graduate school to be a school librarian. And so I think from what I'm aware of, every school district starts with that as the template, and then they kind of tailor it a little bit to maybe their own needs in their own schools. And it's really quite simple. I mean, if you don't like a book, we would ask somebody to make an informal challenge first. So sometimes, a parent could come to me and say, I don't think this book is appropriate for this reason, and it might be something that wasn't on my radar. And I take a look at it and go, whoa, you're right. We have that at the wrong grade level. That really should be. And then I look it up, and it's possible we just made a mistake. We have series, and the first 3 books in the series were of the child in elementary school, and then the 4th book might be when they're in middle school. Well, we didn't realize it. We just knew all these elementary kids love books 1 through 3, so we just order book 4. Once in a while, we'll get a book and think, wow, this is really more of a middle school setting. We let the parents make the decisions. We don't restrict books and say no one can have this book unless they are a 5th grader or something like that. But, if you think of it this way, there are some people, on the other side of this issue, that's censorship, and they're really upset that we're censoring books. No, that's not necessarily what we're trying to do. We are trying to make sure that books are finding their way into the hands of kids that are ready for those books. And some of them, it might be a 3rd grader, sometimes it might be a 5th grader. All kids mature at different levels, different speeds, and have different lived experiences that make the books different for each child. And so it's really impossible to say, this book can only be read by a 6th grader. I know I read books in my middle school forever. Judy Blume book, I remember reading it in middle school, and it's still on the banned books list now. And I read that in middle school and really didn't think much of it, right? So, and bless her heart, Judy Blume's still out there fighting the good fight to this day. So what we do is we let the parents know we have this book. We recommend it for this age of a student. And you go ahead and you make the decision where your child is, because the parents know their children much better than we do. And so it's hard because parents especially look at just the high school level and they think, why is this terrible book there? This book is so terrible. If you look at it, it's the exact same concept as the elementary, though. We are not going to have every single book in an elementary school at the kindergarten level. We can't do that. We have to have books that are for the 5th grade students as well. And so some people are getting bent out of shape about some of the books that are maybe more particularly relevant to 11th and 12th graders, or only 12th graders that are more relevant to that age of a student. And maybe they are inappropriate for a 9th grade student. I understand that that could be a concern. But again, everything can't be at the beginning ninth grade level. We have students that are in 12th grade that are stepping foot on college campuses now. They were in high school a month ago, right? And so now they're on their own in college campuses. We have students that were dually enrolled in college classes last year. So it is my job to provide materials that challenge and make sure that these students that are at the very highest level in the high school have materials that are relevant to them the same way that I do as an early ninth grader, just like kindergarten and fifth grade. It's just really important that parents understand the diverse age, maturity, background, and viewpoint that we're trying to cover with all of our books. And you can't please everybody. And if you start pulling books out and saying this book is inappropriate or that book is inappropriate, well, who decides that? And who gets to make that call? And what if I disagree with you? Or what if a different parent disagrees with you? And where does it stop? Where does it stop? There's a very slippery slope. Once you get going on pulling out these books, it really, really becomes very complicated.
So in our school district, we had some challenges. And I think what came out of that is it was a pretty dusty policy that we had because it just wasn't an issue until a few years ago. And the formal school challenge policy is now much more robust, right? And I think that is not standard across districts. There's resources for sure, and districts can have their own ways of implementing in their own districts. But it seems to me you got to have a kid who actually attends that school. You have to have, if you're going to issue a formal challenge, you have to have actually read the book. The book needs to, and then you need to have a committee, like you said, who's making this decision, right? It's not just the librarian or one parent or even the principal or the superintendent. There should be a committee of stakeholders, right? And depending on, and still everyone might not be happy, but it goes through this process. And if that's the process, then, we can kind of live with that result.
And that's pretty much the way that they all work. I mean, they're all of the challenge policies in every district that I'm aware of, while there might be specific details that vary, in the end, it pretty much is what you just said. A parent needs to read the entire book. They can file a challenge. Again, you hope that they'll do an informal challenge first, and maybe you can work it out with them first. But if not, then it goes to the formal challenge, and then a committee would be put together of somebody from all different areas of the district. So a student, a parent, an administrator. I mean, typically it's just, a good diverse group that you're getting somebody from all of the different viewpoints. And then certainly they would read it and come together and make a decision. And then what they typically do is they make a recommendation to the school board, and then, or the superintendent who makes the recommendation to the school board. Exactly how that plays out, again, those are just kind of minute details, but typically that committee then would make a recommendation whether they would retain the book or they would remove the book. And then the school board, only the school board can remove a book. I don't even have the authority to remove a book. I can't do that. And I've been asked to remove books a few times over my tenure. But, again, I bring out the policy and say, I don't have the authority to do that. I can't do that. The school board in our board policy is the only body that has the authority to remove a book, which is good. Again, it's not on one person. It is on a group of people. We do not have in our policy that the person making the challenge has to have a student in the district. I think that is a good rule to have. And we never have had any book challenges until a couple of years ago. That was the first one ever. And we've had two since then. And both books were retained. And the school board did read both books and voted to retain the books as well.
Can I jump in here with something? I think that it's really important to note that having the policies, the board policies, the library procedures are very important so that the school district knows how to proceed in these situations, and so people are on the same page. But I think it's important to clarify that it doesn't solve the conflict at all. Like having a process where we conclude that we're going to keep the book is in no way ends these conflicts. As Christine said, it usually just escalates it to another strategy, because these conflicts aren't about books in reality. That's just the vehicle that's being used to, which you can look at Christine's case, for example. There was outcry about books, about pornography in the libraries for how many years, Christine, before anyone even filed a challenge to a book? I mean, it was,
I think 3.
3 years of talking about pornography and complaining about it before anyone filed a formal challenge, because it's more about the messaging and the narrative and the attempts to destabilize public education than it is about the books. Like, because before it was the books, it was the masks. It just takes these different forms. So having the policies in place is a great way for the educators to be on the same page and to have a way that we all respond to this, and a professional, following the established standards of the industry for libraries, but it doesn't at all alleviate these conflicts.
Right.
That's very true.
So do we want to dive into the situation? So what's happening? So you've had challenges to several books, and then this lawsuit was filed. So can you walk us through that a little bit?
Well, the lawsuit actually has nothing to do with the books. It's a completely separate issue. So the books, that is a problem that we're dealing with, a concern from a parent or a group of parents and mostly grandparents, I would say, complaining about the content of some of our books, mostly at the high school, some other books as well. But my issue and my complaint that was filed is in regard to the way I have been treated through all of this, because this has been made very personal and a smear campaign, in my opinion, directed toward me. And so rather than saying, again, I mean, I believe in parental rights 100%. I do believe that it is the state law that parents have the right to control their own child's education. And I believe that to be true. In this situation, it's not somebody complaining about a book. It's somebody saying that I am a groomer. I am grooming children. It is many people saying that I'm a pedophile, and people saying that I'm giving children pornography. And it's a very targeted attack on me as a person. And it's all untrue, and it's been very hurtful to my family and to me. And, I've done my best to try to navigate through all of it and keep my head held high, and I've not responded to any of it. I did send a cease and desist letter. It's been going on for so long. It's been 5 years. A cease and desist letter was sent saying, stop doing this. This is uncalled for, and it's not true. And the main person doing these things was told by the prosecuting attorney of Grand Rapids that it wasn't true, was told by the police that it's not true, it's not pornography. There is a legal standard for books, and it's called the Miller test. And that's how books are determined, whether they're obscene or not. It's not pornography. And it didn't really matter what was said. It was just continued this whole false narrative and dehumanization of me. They were inciting anger and hatred toward me, to the point where I was getting threats. And I still have been receiving quite a lot of hate directed toward me. And I'm afraid. I have been afraid to go to school. My picture has been shared thousands of times. I mean, really over 1 million times. The video was shown over 1 million times. But my lawsuit is not about books at all. It's completely about the smear campaign and the inappropriate behavior, in my opinion, directed toward me. So
thank you for clarifying that. And I'm sorry that that's happening, because it's uncalled for. And unfortunately, you're not alone. You're not the only
Right.
person who has this happening. It's just grown and grown and grown, and social media is a big piece of this, giving people a place to amplify this kind of rhetoric and hate. Like you said, it's not about the books, but they're using that as a leverage point, right? So just like what you said, Sarah, about the before it was masks, and it's always something, and how do we stop this? In your research, Sarah, has there been any success stories of being a way to turn a community? And we're always going to have those lone wolf folks that are, doing to you, Christine, what they do. But is there a way to turn the tide back against them? I mean, has anybody been successful at that?
Well, that's actually why I'm researching Lowell. That's actually the focus of the research that I'm doing in the first article that I've just written. Because, and the reason that I was interested in diving into this research, because Lowell has been very effective at resisting the pressure, the politicized pressure, specifically to censor books. And like you said, it is part of a broader movement that's happening in districts all over the country. Something like 60% of school leaders report having these political conflicts occurring in their school district, and that it's causing incredible stress, time, trauma to the educators involved. And it's a larger narrative that our school districts are full of teachers indoctrinating students with their, liberal political ideologies and complaints about DEI programs, social emotional learning, LGBTQ allyship. Any of those things kind of fall into this umbrella, as well as the books. And so in Christine's district, there was a local group that formed specifically to focus on Lowell, and as you said, like using social media to kind of spread this narrative, as well as using school board meetings to make public comments, because that's a forum where the board members can't directly respond, or so that parental rights advocates can get up there and read an excerpt of a book or make a statement that then just kind of sits in the air to everybody that's listening. So I learned about Christine's situation and began really looking at what strategies were the school leaders using that were effective and allowed them to resist the censorship, and also allowed them to regain the trust of the community. Because I remember Christine saying, like, in the beginning when we were talking, that these are a lot of good parents. They are concerned. They care about their kids. So they hear pornography in the light. They're like, what? And they're very worried about that and concerned about that and emailing principals and what's going on, so how do we change that? How do we communicate truth in that situation? How do we combat disinformation? How do we regain public support? And I really focused on four ways that they were able to do that. And there is a huge absence in research identifying ways to respond to these politicized attacks. So I think it's really important, and I hope that my article will inspire more researchers to look at and form kind of best practices or some sort of agreed upon ways that school leaders can feel equipped to resist those. So I can quick give you the four. I don't know if you're
Please do.
That'd be wonderful.
So the first is really making sure that all school leaders, and by school leaders I mean school board members, administrators. I considered Christine in that position as a district librarian, but making sure everyone is following the board policies and the library procedures. So if one or a few people go rogue and start pulling books or won't follow the policy, it becomes a mess of leadership. So school administrators did a great job, for the most part, deferring to Christine as the expert on those library procedures and policies, followed her advice, had her educate the board members, which was really important, on things like the Miller test, on definitions of obscenity and selection policies. So following the procedures and policies in place. some schools need to make sure they have procedures and policies in place to begin with, because you don't want to be reactive. But that was definitely the first one. The second one was using a number of different strategies to counter the disinformation in the community. And Christine did a great job at doing a lot of community education, both internally for like Board of Education members, principals, as well as parents, community members. They did a FAQ page so that, when a principal's meeting with a parent and they have these concerns, you could just point them right to that and get a lot of those common questions answered. But Christine has done presentations. At one point, Christine and her principal wrote a letter to the editor, because they have some really centralized kind of news pages on Facebook that a lot of these conversations were happening on. So they wrote a public letter addressing a lot of this that like over 200 parents co-signed as sign of support. But a number of strategies. When Christine and some of the principals heard kind of murmurs or whispers of parents who were concerned, they proactively reached out to those parents and said, can we talk? Can you come in? Can I answer your questions? Which takes a lot of time, but I think went a long way with parents in the community. So that was the
Building
second
trust.
one. Yeah, really building relationship building, all things that are really important for administrators, but finding ways to combat that disinformation. The third
I just
way.
want to jump in really quickly,
Yeah, go
though.
ahead.
Everything you said, 100%, but also putting the truth out there. I mean,
Yes.
combating misinformation, but also this is the truth. I mean, we were trying so hard. We weren't hiding anything. We've never been hiding anything. And it was twisted. And I felt like, wait, no, that's not the truth. So again, standing up for the truth. And I just think that's so simplistic, but it's really the way, what we were trying to do is get the truth out there.
Absolutely. And the third strategy was really having pro school super supporters. So really finding, I don't know if it's so much the job of the school leaders, but having a way where you can really have a pro school super supporter group counter the negative narrative that's going on. And there's a number of people that I interviewed for my research that are part of the Lowell community that really stood up to do this. So they formed a counter group. They made sure they were at board meetings to make positive statements, to encourage the educators, say, we're behind you, you're doing the right thing. Sometimes even just wearing a color to show solidarity. They also really got on social media all the time and policed those comments that were going on and called out, when there was mistruth, and also spread, as Christine said, like spread the truth of what was, a situation that had happened, because people like Christine can't go on social media and fight that battle, and the board members can't, and the administrators can't. So they're all at a huge disadvantage. So having those super supporters in your community.
So you're talking community members and parents, really standing up at a school board meeting and supporting on social media and, kind of just getting out there and like standing
alumni.
up.
All of those people got involved. I mean, alumni coming in and saying, no one ever indoctrinated us. One of the most beautiful moments I learned about was a student speaking out at the school board meeting, saying, here's why it's so important that we have this library program. Here's what I learned from my teacher, that you don't just read a passage, take one excerpt of a passage. You have to understand it within a larger context. And here's why this, we need access to these books. And, hearing those student voices and their maturity is so impactful, I think. And it sends a clear message to the board members that the loud voices you're hearing are not representative of what the whole community feels. And then the last one, I think, is just really understanding and delegitimizing the homophobic and racist rhetoric that's really the undertones of these whole movements. And if you look at the list of books that are the complained about books or the controversial books, they're almost all books that feature LGBTQ or characters of color, or those types of themes, relationships. I can give you some of the list of books that you think sound that it's just unbelievable that somebody would have an issue with. But there's so much underlying racism and homophobia that cannot be normalized, and it has to really be addressed and limited. And the school district has done a great job also, like, in some ways limiting the harassment of some of the teachers, in some ways kind of limiting this rhetoric, because it is not, like I said, it's not necessarily a good faith. We can all remember as educators when we had a parent call us up and want to talk about something, like, sure, come in, let's talk about this. You want the best for your kid. I want the best for your kid. We trust each other. Let's work together. Let's figure it out. And that's just not what, unfortunately, a lot of these situations are. So recognizing that this isn't just a good faith disagreement between, like, a group of parents in a school. It's much different than.
Well, it's manufactured. Like, I understand, like, if it's organic, my kid came home, was reading something or saw something and was like, oh my God, Mom, I can't, I'm really struggling with what I read, or, then you talk to your teacher because you're a team. You both want what's best for this child. That's going to happen. That's going to happen. Full stop, right? We're all people. We're all human. We're all come at it from different things. But when you haven't read a book that you're challenging, when you don't even live in the district, when you're picking out titles like, I want this book banned, it's not even in the library. That's manufactured. If you're reading out of context in a school board meeting where there are students present, then that is not good faith, because if you're so concerned about the kids not seeing it, you are not going to introduce it in a public forum where students are. And so I think that's a really, there's been these larger forces at play, and Sara, you hinted at it before. It's like destabilizing public education. It is sort of one of these, like, through goals, with whether it's books or masks or other incidents, and we're seeing it in all kinds of communities.
Yeah, statistically, it's highest in predominantly white middle class suburban schools school districts is where these conflicts are happening the most.
That's interesting.
Especially ones where there's some change in the demographics, like there's some new families moving in, so there's kind of like a little bit of shifting going on. Yeah, as I heard a mom say at one of her school board meeting once about the books, like, these books aren't representing our way of life and our values anymore. So kind of this view that, like, this is our space that should continue to represent which is not, it's a certain way of life or a certain set of values that have existed there.
Well,
Yeah.
and I feel like, parents have always had the option to opt out. They've always had this option. And I feel like what's happening is really more a matter of control. That you're controlling what other kids can read. Like, one of the books that was being banned was, not in my district, but commonly was Anne Frank's Diary, the graphic novel version, which my daughter was like in 4th and 5th grade reading that. She was fine. Don't take that away from me and my kid. Like, your kid doesn't have to read it. And that to me really speaks to these larger forces at play around the country that you're seeing play out in school boards, locally.
You're absolutely right. I believe exactly what you said. I think it's control, because the other piece that we haven't really mentioned that is also critical here is these are optional books. They're not part of the curriculum. We are not speaking about something that any kid is being forced to read. Students don't have to check any library books out if they don't want to. They particularly don't have to check out the ones that their parents don't want them to. And as you already mentioned, parents have always had the right to restrict books from their kids' accounts, and they will continue to do that, as they should. That's fine. Yeah. But the law says that you have a say in your own child's education. It does not say that you have a say in everybody else's children's education. And that's the part that some people just seem to be missing. And so, we really have in our district one person for the most part, one parent that is unhappy with the library program. As a school librarian, I have really not heard from any other parent that is unhappy with the overall program. I mean, I've had other parents that have had concerns about books. We've talked about them. We've worked it out to where they were happy and understood that the situation was, again, that this is a choice for their child, maybe not everybody's child. And sometimes it's like, it's great. Thank you for bringing that to my attention. I've not even read that book. I will read it and I will get back with you. And then I do that. And then I look and see what other schools in the area, if they have that book, if they have it placed at a different level, all of the things that I can do to make sure that we are placing books in the appropriate levels that's certainly what we want to do. We can't please everybody when there are differing opinions. And so again, these are library books, they're optional, and parents have the choice to just say, my kid can't have any books out of the library. Then if they don't trust us to do what's best for them, then maybe that's the best option if that's what they think. So
well, and that's another key word is trust, right? It's like, are we building it or are we tearing it apart?
Absolutely. And it's important to mention too that these books that some parents are complaining about, do you really believe they're going to go get a 600-page book to read 4 pages that have more of a mature scene in it? Or are they going to go on their phone and they're going to look something up very simply? I don't really see kids coming in and reading 500- and 600-page books to be sexually aroused. I don't see that. And I don't see them even coming in and searching for these books.
Yeah.
And some of the books that are on these lists are books that most kids are not going to even know exist, right? Until you point out. And then that's the first thing, like, oh, you can't have it? I want to have it. But the truth is that the kid that needs to read that book is probably struggling. And, maybe is curious, whatever, but some of these books are a matter of life and death. And the representation matters. So having, LGBTQ characters, right? These are often targeted, like you said, Sarah, and minorities. Just having that representation, seeing yourself, or God forbid, some terrible experience that you've been through. We have the world at our fingertips with our phone. But in a school library, you have all of the protections from the law, being a school library, and then you've got an individual who has likely a master's degree in curating these books. Now, can some books slip through? Probably, right? We're all human, whatever. But really, the good faith argument is like we are putting information in kids' hands at the age-appropriate time in a setting where they can benefit from this. That's what I want for my kids, and I don't want to take that away from someone else. Just, sometimes I might see something like, well, I really don't want my kid reading about that, or I don't think my kid's ready. But you know what? My neighbor's kids might really need that. And it's not for me to say, well, you can't have it, because no one should have it.
Right. Absolutely. That's 100% of the message. And quite honestly, the American Library Association did a study a couple of years ago, and I'm not exactly sure on the number, but I believe it was 82% nonpartisan people that were surveyed are against censorship. And it's been made into a political issue. And it really is not. The vast majority of people believe, Kath, just what you just said. They understand whether it fits into their family's morals and values and ethics or not, that this is an individual decision and something that maybe another child really does need and could benefit from. And we really want that representation and diversity for our kids. We want books that are relevant for them. We want them to feel seen. And we also need them to be able to develop the critical thinking skills and even understand the different viewpoints, but to be able to say, this book isn't for me, that's okay. That's totally fine. You start reading a book, you find out that it isn't for you. The self-selection piece is really important for all of our kids to be able to make those choices and understand. And so it's the same thing. If there's a book that I'm reading that's really violent or something that I just don't like, I don't have to finish it. And it's okay for kids to understand that same thing, or return a book if it just isn't working for you. That's okay.
Right. Good point. Yeah.
Well, this is a lot. It's a lot. It's a lot to unpack. It's a lot to unpack.
And
it really is.
It just is so upsetting that, some people take it to the point to how they treat you, Christine, and it's like, how, what is that motivation? Because all of this is one thing, but then to take it to that personal level with their personal attacks on you, that is just a whole new thing. And I think, I don't know if that's unique to this time. I think it is unique to treat, education staff this way. I don't know if I've ever seen that in my life before. It's astonishing. And I don't know how big of a group this is that you're dealing with, but I sure hope that you have support from your community to kind of help push back on this.
I do feel like the community has been very, very supportive. And I feel like Lowell is a really great community. It's a lot of wonderful people, but it's really one parent that has been complaining. All of the rest of the comments that I've received have been overwhelmingly supportive. And you're right, absolutely, Lisa. The attack on me personally, I've never sed such a targeted campaign against a person. And when I finally did file the lawsuit, because I had had enough. It was just not getting any better. In fact, it was getting worse. I got a death threat, and I had several threats of harm against me. I've continued to be very afraid of some people in our community. And that just educators, school librarians, and public librarians are all dealing with this, and they don't need to be doing this. But to be a public servant does not mean that you should be a doormat and people can treat you poorly. And I found it really interesting when the lawsuit was filed that the person, the defendant in the situation, said, why is she making this personal? And I just found that to be so ironic, because I have literally never had a conversation with this person. I've never posted about this person. I have tried to show grace in this whole situation. I've tried to wait it out and be patient and understand that this will hopefully pass. And it just never happened. It just didn't get any better. School librarians and other educators deserve to be treated respectfully. This is about human decency. This is about, not demonizing people and weaponizing our books. I mean, it just has gone way too far. But I just felt like it was time to stand up for the truth and let people know it's gone too far.
And there are not adequate protections in place for librarians in her situation. And that's my next article is really focusing on that, because Christine explored, and other supporters of Christine have explored a number of other options before getting to this step where Christine has to pay for this lawsuit, out of her own pocket. People have tried, every other avenue, and there just are no protections for educators in this situation. It causes incredible moral injury to educators who dedicate their entire careers to loving children and helping children. And then, for 5 years daily to be called a predator and a groomer and a pedophile and all of these names is just devastating. And then beyond that, to be afraid to go out in your own community, you're not sure, who feels that way about you. The trauma of it is just unbelievable, especially in this situation where it's such an extremely abusive situation. What's happening to Christine? What's happened to Christine? And just the fact that there's the only way to get it to stop is to file a lawsuit like Christine had to file is really, really sad that's the case. And we would love to see that changed and see more protections for educators.
I hope this helps. It's less about me and more about trying to help other educators and school librarians and public librarians to not have to deal with this, because I think Lisa's the one that mentioned earlier, this is going on all over our state. And I'm hoping maybe people will think twice about before they become a keyboard warrior and go after somebody. Maybe understand this is a person that you are doing this to, that has a family and has feelings. And, this is not the way we solve problems. All it does is makes it worse. And so I'm hopeful that it will help all of the educators in our state and public librarians as well. I'm hoping.
Yeah, I hope so too. I thank you for standing up for yourself, and therefore standing up for others too.
I'm sorry that this is happening to you, Christine, and I do applaud your efforts for not only, as Lisa just said, standing up for yourself and for others and sort of paving the way forward, but standing up for the kids and standing and keeping those books in the hands of the 6 libraries that you're in charge of and in your district. Like, ultimately, like, that's what we want, right? We need to protect our educators, and we need to protect our kids and their freedom to learn and to think critically. So I thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And it's funny because that's one thing that we really didn't even talk about, because there are so many other things to unpack, as you said. But really, people don't give our kids enough credit. We have some really brilliant students that are mature enough to handle some of these more complex and mature topics, and they are ready for it.
It was very, very interesting, all of the support that I received from students, to feel how many kids really were just grateful. And I had to be very careful. I didn't speak to any kids necessarily about it, but I received many, many notes from students, and many have spoken at school board meetings, and very articulately, I might add. They came across really well. But we have some very mature and just really brilliant kids.
So, in interest of time, I thought we would move to our signature question. Sara, what does the matriarchy mean to you?
There's a part of it. I mean, I think all of the usual kind of connotations of, strong women using their voice, standing up for their beliefs, but also there's a certain part of like legacy involved in it for me. Thinking about, as we talked about in the beginning of this episode, the women that poured into me, that inspired me, not only personally, but I think about like my rights, my understandings of things, women, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Bell Hooks, all Hillary Clinton, just seeing these role models, these examples of women, these women who set precedent or who shared their knowledge. And then also thinking about how can I continue to do that for the next generation. So one of the reasons that I'm deeply invested in this research is because I'm worried about my teacher education students who are going to be out in the field soon. And I don't want them to face what Christine is facing. So how can I prepare them for that? How can I be a voice for them? How can I pour into them kind of in that same way? And so it feels very, matriarchy in a lot of ways feels very generational to me. That kind of passing down in a lot of ways, but also creating a representation or an example of what we can become.
I like that. I like that a lot. Thank you. Turn to you, Christine. What does the matriarchy mean to you?
Well, it's interesting because I think maybe growing up with my mom being my only caregiver and my everything, and my mom was my everything, I never really realized until I became an adult that there were people that didn't believe that girls and women could do everything, because I had a mom that did do everything, and the sky was always the limit for me. I just never in my wildest dreams even thought we would be where we are today with some of the things that we are facing. And I guess I have no trouble saying I dissent anytime I disagree, and somebody better listen, because I matter. And so I want to carry on my mom's legacy of just equal rights. I mean, I want to be equal, and I want to make sure that I pass that legacy on to my daughter too. I still am flabbergasted that it even is a thing. I just can't. I just can't believe it that this day and age that this is where we are, and even having to fight for any of our rights. I find it really hard to believe that it isn't the way that everybody thinks, and I just don't think I'll ever understand how it could be anything less.
I agree. Thank you. I so appreciate both you coming on today. This was a really good discussion, and I appreciate all the work that you both do because we need you, and we will. We will get through this time, and you guys will be a big part of why. So I appreciate you.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you for using your platform to talk about this issue too. I think it's really valuable, the work that you're doing as well.
Thanks, and keep fighting the good fight.
Keep on fighting. Let's build the matriarchy. All right.
That's
Bye.
right.
Oh, wow.
What are we doing, Lisa?
I don't know.
Why does it have to be like this?
I don't know, but those are some sheroes. I mean,
Absolutely.
wow. And I think you said it when we were talking about this episode, that Christine, she didn't ask for any of that. She's just trying to care for children and care, for her community and do the right thing. And to be attacked like that is just, it's unconscionable. It really is.
And the truth is that I don't want to spend my energy trying to figure out why someone is acting like that. I want to spend my energy protecting the people that are aligned with my values, which clearly Christine and Sara are, in protecting books and kids and, good faith arguments. I think, Christine was very clear, I thought, about the line between you can't have every book in a library for a kindergartner, right? And sometimes a book will get moved back and forth, and there is room in that system that a parent just doesn't have to opt out completely. But this is, if we're keeping our humanity and we are approaching in good faith and with some trust, that line can shift and does shift.
Yeah, well, for sure. Absolutely. And I think for the wider community to recognize that a certified librarian has studied this. Like there's thought processes around these different books and how and when to apply them and where, what age groups and that sort of thing. And it sounds like she is, just like so many librarians, open to feedback on that.
Exactly.
And then, you make a decision out of wisdom, not out of emotion. And
just fear of retribution.
Well, yeah, fear. Yeah. Right, exactly. So, I think she, is doing a fabulous job, and I certainly doesn't just deserve the vitriol that she's receiving. But you and I, Kath, know other people who are in education positions who have also experienced that, and it's just very disturbing. It's just so disturbing, and it is coordinated to an extent. Like, it's coordinated. There are some forces out there that are pushing these narratives, and certain people in the communities pick them up. And I loved Sara's paper on the four ways that she has found to be successful to resist, and the community is a big part of that. And I know, Kathy, you've been a part of that in your own school district, to try to support the educators and the board and that sort of thing. To be there to help them, to speak up for them, because often they can't.
Exactly.
Right?
Like a school board member, they have their role to play, and anyone who's an employee, they have a line to walk, and sometimes they can't even stand up for themselves. But you know what? As community members, we sure can. And I will say that you don't have to go up and speak at a school board meeting, although I would highly recommend that. There are steps to get there too. And sometimes you don't have to overthink. You hear something, send an email to your school librarian, to your teacher that's, you see maybe is getting singled out or targeted. Just send an email of support. I can tell you it goes a long way. Send an email to a board member. If you don't want to go up and speak at a school board meeting, send an email, because when they only see the negativity and their loud voices, they start to think that that's what the community wants. So as much as we can get in there and engage and shift the narrative, and I think really that's how the community starts to heal. And the book banners were never the good guys. Right? And the vast majority of people do not want this. They do not support blanket censorship in this manufactured way, right? Not being open to feedback and improvement, because there's always room for that.
Right.
But that's not what we're talking about here.
Right.
Like, let's be clear. That's not what we're talking about here.
That's right. And I think, it's interesting that they like to put all of everything, all these books they don't like, into this pornography bucket, right? And there is a very specific definition for pornography. And Christine talks about that a little bit. And I think that's also the kind of discussions we need to be having within these situations. Like, I know locally that's kind of died down around here a little bit, but there are other places across the state and country where these kind of attacks are happening. And again, librarian science, like the Miller test, go to your state librarian association and read up what they do, what they recommend. And I guarantee you there's no pornography in school libraries.
So
it's just not happening, guys. But if you find one, write me an email. Let me know.
Send a strongly worded email. And when this was going on in our community, which, we live in a very, very purple town, and I feel like we're at the cross section of a lot of these culture wars. And I think a lot of people would be really surprised going to a school board meeting or hearing that our teachers are being targeted in Rochester, Michigan. It's a very lovely place to live and raise a family. What do you mean this is happening? Yes, this is happening. And so, when I read a passage out of context, right, I was like, oh, maybe I don't want my kid to read this book. That was my gut reaction. And so then I went and I got the book and I read it. And when I finished it, and I was like, oh yeah, I kind of remember what they were talking about. It was not the main point of the book, and it served the story, and it was such a, in looking back, I'm like, why would they highlight that? That's
right.
Not what the book was about.
Right. And that exactly. And that's so much what happens, not only with this subject, but so many subjects where, you take a little piece of something, you isolate a small piece of something to create outrage, manufactured outrage. But once you get the whole story, it makes more sense, right? And you might not feel the same way. And so we have to be aware of that as people. And that brings me to another point that Christine brought up, which is that we do not have a structure around or education around media literacy at a statewide level. It's not I know there are some schools who do it here or there, and they do it well, I'm sure, but it's not across the board. And I think that's huge. And we really, that's something that we all as parents and just as citizens should start considering asking for, because not only do our kids not get it, but most adults don't have media literacy.
Yeah.
And we know it's a huge problem, right? And how do you sift through all the propaganda, right?
It's a huge problem. And, I'm fortunate to live in a district that does have a librarian in every school, right? We have 13 elementary schools. We have a lot of schools, 20 schools. And every building has a position filled for a school librarian. But that's not the case in many districts around Michigan, and some are sharing librarians. Some literally don't have librarians, maybe not even a library, right? And so what are we doing? We're giving one more thing for our teachers to teach. We have to put money, we have to invest in our kids and their education. And to hear that Michigan is 46th in the nation for the ratio of school librarians to students, like that's so sad. You know, we don't have a nurse in Rochester Community Schools. We have one nurse for the entire district of 15,000 kids. So what happens to that? It falls on the teachers. If we're getting, media information falling on the teachers,
And most
we need
schools
more
don't have
people.
enough
We need more adults.
counselors. We don't have, and I mean, because I grew up in Illinois, and it was very different. I don't know how it is there now, but it was very different. I was so surprised when I had my kids are older now, but when they were in school here in Michigan, and we need to prioritize education. We absolutely do, and media literacy, libraries, all of that is so important. So I guess, really, from my standpoint, I'd like to summarize by saying that these are the kind of issues that we can all dig into locally. And it's hard to affect what's happening at the national level as much as we'd like to. It's a much bigger thing to tackle as an individual, but we can all pay attention to what's happening with our libraries. There's a lot of millages out there right now that need to pass this year in 2025 for libraries, probably schools too. And there are forces that are trying to stop that stuff from happening. There really are forces that are trying to take more money away from our public institutions. So I recommend everybody try to find out what's happening in your community, see what's happening with your library and your schools, and write those emails.
And you might be surprised, because you might live somewhere where oh, well, that's not happening here.
Right.
You know what? Maybe it is, because I know Lisa's been doing some work helping. Can we talk about that for a minute? Oakland Township, which is
very wealthy.
This is part of Oakland area. County. Please, tell our audience what's happening there.
Well, basically, we don't have our own library. We have a library board that collects millage tax money from residents to basically buy services from Rochester Hills Public Library, the neighboring town. It's a world-class library. It's a wonderful library. I think it's the second or third busiest library in Michigan. You go there and it's filled all the time. I mean, people love it. So there is a slight increase that's been asked, and it's a long story, but it's finally on the ballot now for next month, and there are forces in town that are trying to get people to vote no on the new millage. There's a renewal that most people seem to agree to vote yes on, but they don't want to give the library any more money. But it's like a 0.14 mil. So if you do the math on that, if you have a $250,000 taxable value house, which usually you can guesstimate to be a market value of $500,000. This is very rough, so don't hold me to it, but say it's a $500,000 market value house, you're going to be paying $35 more a year. That's one hardcover book.
Oh my God.
You know
my
what I mean?
Audible subscription was way more than that.
Yeah. And the complaint is, we keep giving more money to the library, but taxes in Michigan are complicated. But basically, guys, they want to be open on Sundays. We want them to be open on Sundays. They have salary increases. I mean, there's inflation forever. So it's very confusing to me if you try to put logic to it, like we were talking about with Christine. But if you just realize that most likely the basis of it is that they just want to make public institutions, they take the money out of public institutions, and to tear them down. And it's just really sad, but that seems to be a movement overall in our country right now. And so pay attention, save your libraries, save your schools, and do what you can,
See if you have a millage on the ballot, because I'll tell you what, if you live in Oakland Township, Michigan, you do. You do in August.
August 5th.
And if that doesn't pass,
and Troy in November, big library millage in Troy.
Yeah. Like, can you imagine going to, like, you're not really paying attention to what's going on, and then you go to use the library, and you're like, what do you mean I can't use the library? Well, the millage didn't pass. What millage? Like, don't be that person. Be the person that knows what's going on, and then tell your neighbors that vote for it. Because these millages are often won on the smallest of margins. And if you get a lot of people like, well, I don't use the library, so I don't care. I don't want to put any more money. Okay, you can't put $35 from your $500,000 home. Whatever. I will tell you that I will spend more than that on Amazon.
Yeah.
On a book.
But you know what's interesting about that? So this has been a fight that's been going on for a while, and I won't bore you with all the details. But at one point, we did get quite an outpouring of people that showed up at a library board meeting last year, and this is, it's a fairly conservative town, and so I was shocked. One of the most interesting things I found was a guy who stood up and talked. He's got several kids, and they homeschool. And he's like, my wife needs that library to homeschool. And I was like, wow. Like, so often, like, people who homeschool are like, oh, I don't care about the schools or whatever like that. But he was like, absolutely 100% all library. Like, no, we absolutely need our services with the library. So, yeah, the library is for everybody. We all need our libraries. Yeah. So.
Yeah, and it's more than books. And you think a library is just books, but it's really it's an integral part of the community, And there's so many resources that you can get. There's people there that can help you, right? Like Google really doesn't know the answer to everything, and sometimes you need a human to help you. And the library is where a lot of people have to start.
And our particular library has so many more services, and I bet if everybody checked it, like really, I started digging into our website to see how many there is so much there that would be like a whole hour for me to go over everything that Rochester Hills Public Library offers. But libraries are really, really important. It's way more than just the internet.
Yeah.
You said it.
I mean, they got a 3D printer. They got a Cricut. Like, you can save a ton of money.
You can get you can rent a water tester. That's what I'm waiting for right now, is the water tester. I know, like, if you go into all the, sorry, I don't mean to digress, but if you go into all the things that you can rent, and because they have like kits, right? Like you can learn to play a guitar. You can learn there's so much there. And the idea is that, you borrow their guitar for a short time, and then if you like it, you can go get your own guitar, right?
Yeah.
But it's wonderful. It's a wonderful resource.
Yeah. Well, and let's support our local resources.
Yes, please do.
And support our local schools, our local libraries, and our local librarians, right? Like, write that email. Just, do a 2-second search on Google and see what's going on in your town, in your school library. Like, again, you might be surprised.
Yeah. Yep, do it. All right. So on that note, thanks everybody for listening, for supporting us. Please follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. Those are our 5 targeted platforms that we're working on to grow our community in. And we'd love a nice comment, in particular on YouTube, because we've got some interesting people there once in a while commenting some interesting things. So we could use a thumbs up and a nice comment, just like, sending the email to the teacher. Send your little matriarchy ladies a nice note here or there. We love it. So that's all free. We're not asking for any money. Just if you could just do that for us and share and tell your friends how much you like the matriarchy.
Spread the community. Yeah.
Spread the community.
Well, and thank you everyone. Thank you to all our listeners for hanging in there with us, and hope you're enjoying it. Welcome to our community.
Welcome to the matriarchy.